Hi friends, this is Jennifer Belair with Open Hearts Club, and I'm joining you from a beautiful summer day in my backyard. It's green, the clouds are on point, and there's just lots of beauty around me. So I'm hoping that you're going to enjoy the call of the blue jay and all sorts of other goodies that may or may not enter into this audio video experience. So today, the topic of discussion that I've been thinking about a lot and have been reflecting on quite often is around the topic of negative thinking and negative thought patterns. And so for myself, I'm going to be speaking from my own personal experience, sharing what I know, my path, my trajectory, in hopes that it might help inspire you or to encourage you to maybe think about thinking differently. So negative thinking is inherently something that is hardwired into our brains. This is something that I've learned along the way, and it's essentially called the negativity bias. You may or may not have heard of it, but it's kind of like this ancient mechanism that is used to help us survive. So if you think back to maybe more ancestral times, and this is still a mechanism that we do use and we still need to use to survive. But essentially it's this idea of thinking of the worst case possible situation and kind of planning it in our head, planning for it, and then we're able to avert it. We're able to, okay, I don't want to get eaten by a tiger. What can I do today to avoid XYZ that may or may not happen to me? So we're kind of hardwired to think this way, and I think that's a really important thing to take note of along this path or along this journey. And once I learned that myself, it changed my life. I decided to take the happiness lab. I can't remember the exact name of the class, if it was happiness lab or happiness course, but it was a free online class through Yale University by Dr. Laurie Santos. And I took that class during COVID because I was like, I'm going to take a lot of classes. This is going to be great. I'm going to learn how to be better, happier, and more joyful. And I really learned a lot, and that was one of my main takeaways from that class experience, was that, hey, we're hardwired to think this way. So if we are able to realize that's a thing, it's trying to serve me, it's trying to protect me, and then pivot in a new direction and be aware of those thinking patterns, we can start to see life in a little bit of a different lens. So for me, that was very informative. It helped me kind of have more grace for myself from past experiences. A little bit about me: I am definitely more joyful and happy than I've ever been in my entire life, and that's due to a multitude of different things that I have done for myself, the way I take care of myself, the way I talk to myself, the way I interact in the world and with people, and that's very complex and layered, as I'm sure it is for yourself. But just knowing this right off the bat was really, really helpful. And so I used to be very negative, for lack of a better word. I would constantly think negatively. I would get myself stuck in these negative thinking spirals that I had no clue, literally no clue how to get out of. And I would surround myself with more negative people or negative thoughts, or maybe get into numbing out using like drinking, excessive amounts of alcohol, and all that good stuff that one does typically in their 20s. So, not facing the reality of who you are and where you're at. And so I was in this kind of difficult situation that I had created through my own negative thinking in my life, and then numbing out. So negative thinking, numbing out, negative thinking, numbing out, just kind of going through those cycles until one day, poof, I just sort of popped out of it. And I was like, wait, why am I thinking so negatively all the time? And why am I numbing out? So I was kind of feeling this way ever since I was maybe in high school, about 16, 17, 15, somewhere in that age range, and it's due to various circumstances. And it's also due to the way we were raised, the examples we had around us, maybe what we consumed, what kind of television, what kind of movies, maybe how our parents behaved, our siblings, our brothers and sisters. So it's a very complex topic, but it's good to think about kind of how you might have been programmed and who were your examples growing up. And so it's not anybody's fault. It's more or less this magical quote that I like to come back to by Maya Angelou is, when you know better, you do better. And so if you're raised in a family where people have been thinking negatively for a long time, chances are you are also going to be that way. And if you're not, then you did it, like you jumped out of the programming of your family. So it took me, I'm 34 right now, it's taken me quite some time to get to where I am today, and I've done a lot of work. But I would say probably the past 6 years I've been on an upward trajectory, and the biggest thing that I've learned along my path is that when I think negative thoughts, I do not feel good. I have been able to recognize negative thought equals body feels closed down, equals stuck in a looping pattern, equals not feeling confident, not feeling joyful, not feeling grateful. And so I think the biggest tip that I'm able to share with my experience is to practice awareness. And so practicing awareness simply means being aware of the thoughts that you are having, noticing them, just watching them, observing them, and not thinking, oh, I'm so stupid, why am I having so many negative thoughts? You know, that's not going to help you. I've been there. That's not a nice place to be. So there's this kind of idea that I've been thinking a lot about that's like, you should treat yourself like you would treat your best friend. And so when that quote or that idea entered into my life, I was like, wow, I do not talk to myself like my best friend. And so that was one of my first sparks of awareness where I was like, I'm not really treating myself that well or that great or that lovingly. So just popping into awareness, observing those thoughts, noticing which ones come up, especially in different situations in your life. And just being aware of them, maybe writing them down if you're someone who likes to journal, maybe just like journaling the negative thoughts that might have come up today. And chances are there's something that's been programming and looping in your life for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, whatever it may be. And there's ways that we can kind of think about thoughts and our memories as malleable. So we know now that the brain is what they refer to as neuroplastic. So it's not this static, stiff thing that stays the same. It's essentially, it's plastic, it's movable, it's shapeable. And so we can kind of think about our thoughts, and I like to use the metaphor of like weeding the garden. So we can weed the garden, pull out the thing, examine it, look at it, question it. Oh, wow, negative thought. Why are you here today? Like, what is your purpose? What's the message that you're trying to give me? Oh, you're trying to protect me. I get it. You know, I really appreciate you trying to protect me, but I think it's time for us to move out of that patterning. So if we can look at our thoughts in more of an objective way and not identify so closely with them, then we're on the right track. So I feel like it's all about that initial awareness, studying, observing the thoughts in an objective way, and then we can plant new seeds. Our minds, our subconscious is all very impressionable, and we might have a lot of programming from our past experiences of our own thinking, and also just from the things that we surrounded ourselves with. So we have to think about, what are some new seeds that I can plant in my mind and in my thoughts anytime that negative thought might come up. So for myself, for example, this whole concept of I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough because X, Y, Z. And this has been a looping thought pattern that's been repeating in my mind for some time. And within the past couple years, I've really, really dissected this thought. I've looked at it and examined it, just like I mentioned with like the weeds in the brain. And just thinking, what's something positive and beautiful that I can plant in its place? And so you could come up with a multitude of different varieties, but the one that I'm sitting with today is, I carry the seed of love. I am good enough. I am whole. I am worthy. And you can see, if you're watching the video, like my face is lighting up as soon as I'm saying these things. So it's like just this concept of like, what we think creates our emotions, which creates our personality, which creates our energy and what we bring to the table. So if we're able to step into that precious, generous moment of awareness, we're going to be able to notice how we're showing up and being like, oh yeah, I don't want to show up like that. I want to show up in this higher elevated state. And the beautiful thing is, once we gather that awareness, we can become kind of creators of our thoughts. We can start looking at the world as if the glass was half full instead of half empty, to use that very popular expression. But like right now, it's a little bit overcast. I could look around and say, oh, geez, yeah, it doesn't look so great out. Or I could be like, wow, there is a turkey vulture flying over my property. This is incredible. Wow, look at those blackberries on the blackberry bush. I can't wait to enjoy them. This land has so much biodiversity. Like, it's just as, for lack of a better word, contagious as negative thoughts are. So if you've ever been someone who has been prone to negative thinking, you know, once you plant that seed of negativity, it's very, very, very easy to go down that spiral. But for every negative thought you have, if you plant one seed of positivity, just watch how you feel. Watch how your posture changes. Watch how you evolve and you change and you show up differently for yourself and for everyone around you. So it's like you have a choice every single day. As soon as you pop into that moment of awareness, you can decide what you want to think in that moment. You can see the glass as half empty, or you can see it as half full. And that's going to predict how you're going to feel. I recently finished a book called Spirit Hacking by Shaman Durek, and one practice that he discusses is this idea of like soul talk. And for soul talk, he talks about like the very first thing we should do when we wake up, as soon as we open our eyes, instead of like dreading all the things we might have to do, which is one way to wake up, right? Another way to wake up is to be excited, to be joyful, to be looking forward to the day, and not necessarily like getting all this stuff done, like woohoo, I'm the best. It's more or less like, how are we going to step into our reality, and what thoughts am I going to plant into my mind in this very beautiful, impressionable part of the day. Sorry, I'm fighting bugs. Because in a lot of traditions, it's known as like the ambrosial. Ooh, I got a little bit of a fighter over here. It's known as the ambrosial hours. So it's this very fertile ground for what we do in that first hour upon waking and the first hour before going to bed is like very fertile ground for our subconscious. So if we can get into the habit of practicing what Shaman Durek describes as soul talk, we can start to plant some new seeds. So for example, you're laying down, you just heard your alarm clock, you open your eyes, or you wait to open your eyes, whatever feels good for you. And instead of being like, that morning sigh, like, things are not working, I wish they were different, etc., 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 you could be like, wow, like, I slept really well last night and my body is thirsty. I can't wait to enjoy some beautiful hydrating water. Or, wow, I woke up next to this person that I love so much and that fills my heart with so much joy. Or you can think about something beautiful that happened the day before, or something you're really looking forward to. You can talk to your body, talk to your soul, talk to your heart space. For me, I'm working a lot with the heart and heart medicine, so I've been practicing talking to my heart, which sounds strange, but it's like, wow, like, thank you so much for beating and for pumping all this blood throughout my body. Thank you for showing me what I really love in this life, and for supporting me, and for being open, and for releasing the old ways of being, the closed hearts, and things like that. So it's like, it's up to us to choose how we plant the seeds. How do we change our realities? How do we change our personalities? As Joe Dispenza talks about in his work, basically this idea of like our thoughts create our reality. And I can attest to that. I think as someone who's growing more aware in my life, that the more I think positively, the better and more joyfully I feel. And when I'm thinking negatively, I can feel it in my body, in the way that I hold myself, in the closed-offed, I don't know if that's a word, closed-offedness that I create in my structure. And I'm a work in progress. I'm not coming to you from the other side and saying, yes, life is the best thing ever when you only think positive ever. I'm coming to you from someone who's on the journey and who's on the path and who's getting these beautiful glimpses of life and this very positive and very beautiful experience, and just noticing what is the internal dialogue that I'm having with myself when things go wrong, when I'm around someone who might trigger me, when I'm moving too fast and not being aware, when I'm not stepping into my own personal pillars of, there's a blue jay, personal pillars of joy and of vitality. Because I know for myself, like having these pillars, if I don't follow those pillars, I cannot be aware, essentially. So the pillars for me are related to like health, right? So eating well, eating things that make me feel alive and energized, having a spiritual practice, so meditation, yoga, time in nature, and then also connecting with family, connecting with myself, connecting to spirit. So if I don't do those things, and also connecting to my body, if I'm not in my body and feeling into my body, if I'm not making an effort first thing in the morning, second thing in the morning to either work out, practice mobility, do some nice yoga, some stretches, run, go for a walk, whatever it may be, whatever it is for me, it might be different for you, but being in the body for me, I can start the whole day really fresh, really invigorated, and really joyful. So a typical morning for me is essentially waking up, sitting to meditate, and it fluctuates. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 50 minutes. It just depends on how I'm feeling that day, and maybe I'll listen to a guided meditation, maybe I'll just watch my thoughts, maybe I'll just journal or do the morning pages like Julia Cameron has in her book, The Artist's Way. So that's kind of like phase one is like for me connecting to the spirit. Phase two is usually phase two also involves cacao. Phase two is also movement, so some kind of movement. And then phase three is this whole like nurturing myself for the whole day. So staying hydrated, eating healthy food, making time to connect with people or connect with the work that I need to do. And if I do those things, I know that my chances of being more aware and observing my thoughts are going to be much, much higher. So it might be different for you, but I want to plant that seed into your mind to maybe think like, what are the pillars in my life that I need to have this balance and have this space and have this equilibrium so that I can be more aware, so that I can do things with intention. I think those are all really powerful mechanisms, and they're all very simple. They're free for the most part. There's a lot of incredible content available online and with really reputable people, but I think the simplest of things is just stepping into that awareness. And a really cool trick that I learned that has helped me be more aware and be more watchful of my thoughts is just to slow down. Like I tend to be someone who moves quite quickly. I'm an Aries sun, so I can be fiery and fast, and that's not always working in my favor. So just knowing who you are, how do you show up in the world, thinking of the things that can cultivate that awareness, noticing those thoughts, which negative ones might be looping from your childhood, or from past experiences, writing them down, and maybe thinking of either a neutral or a positive kind of replacement for those thoughts. So it doesn't have to be something that doesn't feel real. It can be a neutral thought as well. So we're essentially just trying to pull the weeds of the negative thinking, examine them. Wow, this is not nurturing. This is not loving. How am I showing myself I love myself when I'm thinking these thoughts that are not making my body physiologically feel good? So that's the most empowering thing that we can do in our lifetimes, is essentially work on ourselves, to examine our mental behaviors, because that is how we as humans on this planet ripple out into all experiences. So if I'm feeling negative and I'm thinking negatively, and then I go and hang out with my mom, she's gonna feel that right away. and she's definitely an intuitive person, so she'll feel it, right? Like, and most of us are, we just don't always tap into it. It's like that idea of like walking into a room and you're like, oh, something's not right here, it doesn't feel good. Or, wow, something is great, like I feel like so lit up by this place. So what you do internally and how you approach caring for yourself is going to interact and exchange like energy that we can't see, but we can feel it. So that's something that is very true in my life. And even the moment that I'm in a negative thinking pattern, my husband can pick up on it right away. He's like, hey, what are you thinking about? And I'm like, oh yeah, thank you, you caught me. I needed that. So it really doesn't do us any service if we're caught in those spaces. If we can look at our thoughts from an objective standpoint and just be like, I'm having this feeling of anxiety. Where is that coming from? Or wow, I'm really thinking these thoughts that are negative about myself. I wonder where that's coming from. Oh, that's right, because I didn't eat that well yesterday, or I saw someone who didn't really lift my energy or support me in some way, and I've been dwelling on this same conversation from 2 weeks ago and I can't stop thinking about it. So we all experience these things. I think it's completely normal, but we do have the power and the autonomy to challenge those thoughts, to look at them, to observe them, and to welcome them in because chances are they are teaching you a lesson. So I hope this supports you in some way. I hope that you don't feel quite as alone, because I know a lot of content is rooted in just this beautiful empowerment, which is really, really wonderful. But I think it's really good to have conversations around how do we move out of those difficult spaces, and what are some tactics that I can use in my own personal life to lift myself and to bring myself to this new space. So I hope you are able to plant some seeds of love and maybe practice the soul talk or the heart talk, and just talk to yourself in a way like you love yourself. Notice those thoughts. Are they loving? Are they nurturing? Are they supporting you? And really question them. And like I said, I can really attest to that power, and just thinking inside myself, inside my mind's eye, like, wow, I love you. Thank you for working out today. Thank you for taking some time to finish the nutrition program you've been working on. Thank you for making a nutritious dinner. Thank you for calling your mom, and just being gracious with yourself, loving yourself, and thinking positive, beautiful thoughts about yourself, because chances are wherever you're at now, you were somewhere else before, and you didn't just stay on that that plateau where you're just always the same. If you're someone who's striving, you're getting better every day incrementally, and we get to choose to facilitate that improvement in our lives. And it's not about being the best. It's not about having all the things. It's just about building yourself up in a way that supports you, and watching that incredible ripple of life and of love spread from you out into your world. And I hope you find those spaces and places that lift you and that support you. And I hope to continue sharing and talking about tips of the heart space. So wishing you a beautiful and love-filled day today. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you soon. Ooh.